Okay, we're going to talk about the basic setup tab. Up here on the top here we've got some options and a list of things that we'll cover here. This is where you enter your password to protect the ECU. That's used commonly to keep other people from using that calibration or to keep somebody out that you don't want in there making adjustments. There's no backdoor to this. If you enter calibration and you forget it, we have no way of recovering that calibration. You'll have to start from scratch. So use that with caution. Over here is a serial number that can be handy to have for tech support at some time in the future, but this is the electronic serial number that's built into the ECU. The ECU part number, module type. This is calibratable development modules, what we call our dealer boxes. That's what that's going to pull up as, or ProMod boxes are going to come up with calibratable development modules. The regular boxes will say flash only, although it's not just flash only, that's just the designation that is used. ECU model number, firmware version. This is handy for tech support as well. You'll need to know that if you call in for tech support. This is also shown on the main page right here underneath this, so you can get that in a couple of different places. Okay, then we have our options for setting up the engine here. A load type is map based or APC based. Map based is your typical manifold pressure reference speed density, using the manifold pressure to calculate airflow through the engine. APC based is air per cylinder. That's what most of the modern cars are. That's basically load type ignition timing, so your y-axis is going to be based on torque, and it's when you get a good grasp on how it works, it really makes the car nice to drive. You can run a lot more timing advance at lower throttle angles than you can on a pressure-based system, but we'll get into more detail on that in the Spark tab. Swept cylinder volume, this is a critical adjustment. This helps calculate exactly how much airflow is going through the engine. This is needed for correct fueling and for correct VE calculations. So this is an important number here. This is just the cylinder in cc's, swept cylinder volume in cc's per cylinder. Combustion events per rev. This is going to be basically half of how many cylinders on a 4-stroke and the number of cylinders on a 2-stroke. So in this case, this would be set up for a 4-cylinder. If it was an 8-cylinder, you'd have a number of 4 in there. Vehicle weight with driver. This is a non-critical option. This is just used to calculate the performance numbers that the ProEFI generates, quarter mile and ET numbers. Number of cylinders. That's the number of cylinders that you're using in the engine. 8, 4, 6. You just enter that here. Spark enabled TDC counts. That's how many TDC events have to occur before the computer will activate the coils and the injectors. So sometimes you may want to delay it a couple of sync events to get oil pressure before it fires, or if you've got a real high compression engine that sinks really fast and you want it to get a little bit of engine speed before it outputs the coils and ignition, then you could delay that here as well. Fuel weight in pounds is entered here. If you know it, you can enter it. It's not a critical adjustment. So the default 6.25 for gasoline. Then you have the option for 2 or 4-stroke. That just obviously applies to what type of engine that you're calibrating on. Then over here on the top, we've got fuel pump override. I'll use these overrides to turn the fuel pump off while I'm trying to sync an engine for the first time. So while I'm cranking it, it's not firing the injectors and trying to kick back if the timing's off. You can just lock your timing into a specific timing number that you can see on the crank. Spin the engine over with no fuel being injected. Check it with the timing light. Adjust your TDC offset until the timing light agrees. Then you can go up, re-enable your fuel pump, turn the engine over again, get it to fire, leaving the ignition timing locked. Then you check it again while it's running. You always want to check the TDC offset while the engine's running, once you've got the engine fired. Timing lights at low engine speeds can be really erratic and not consistently output through the inductive pickup because the inductance isn't as strong. So this is the number that you adjust up or down until you get the timing number that you're asking for to agree with the timing light. Once you've got that done, you unlock it and you're ready to go. Okay, this is 0 to 720 degrees of offset. 0 and 720 are the same number. Over here we've got some options to turn on the logger. Start logger above RPM 250. That basically means once the engine's fired, at this case, and you're above 5% throttle, it's going to tell the display logger to start recording. Then once you drop below 5%, it's going to tell it to stop recording, but you've got a 30-second delay here. So once the engine's running and you come down below 5%, it's going to record for another 30 seconds before it stops. So that way, if you've got this, this number set to a value that maybe you're shifting gears and you're letting off the throttle, you want it to continue to recording to catch all that stuff, but you're really only interested in more heavy throttle angle stuff. That's kind of what this is designed for. Same with the engine RPM. And then you've got minimum engine runtime for log. Once you turn the key off, the logger is going to record for an additional 5 seconds, as long as your logger is still powered up. So we always want to wire the display loggers to the main relay so the ECU controls when that logger turns off. If you wire to the key switch, this isn't going to do anything, because as soon as you turn the key off, it's going to have to stop recording. Then we've got cranking spark advance table here. This is just based on engine RPM, what the spark advance is going to be. This is also in the cranking tables. We've also put it here just so you can make sure that when you're cranking it, if you're checking the timing and you don't have it locked, that you know what those numbers want to be. This gives you the current active spark request angle. So that's your basic setup tab.